something like a vagina, it's a completely natural, it's a beautiful thing. Babies come out of it, or
Exactly.
they don't come out of it. But it's completely natural. It's the way that we've been taught, and we should check ourselves how we view, right? Like, view the vagina, like. What up, everybody? Welcome to Prove to Me that You're Alive, the most shadow banned podcast in the whole entire world. We call this the Lightcast. We talk about we talk about the truth. For all the truth seekers, this is the truth place. Anyway, today I am so excited because today we have a guest that I've been waiting to get on here for such a long time, and then today she finally was like yes, and I was like, yes, the stars are aligning. If I'm gonna go through like a whole resume of why this human being is so wonderful, I would need a whole other show and a podcast. Maybe one day we'll write a book about how cool this person is. But she's an artist. She's a activist. She speaks very loudly and very articulately about the things that she doesn't like. When I first met her, I said, that's a cool ass mom. And the cool ass mom in the hood used to be that kind of mom that you're never embarrassed when she's around, man. You're like, yeah, that's the cool mom, man. That's the mom that we want around, man. And we think my wife and I, we think the world of her. She's definitely a family member. She's a friend. She's someone that we look up to. And without further ado, the one, the only, the always amazing, the always exceptionally awesome Mel Antler. And I'm going to give you a round of applause.
I feel myself, seriously, like I can feel my temperature rising.
How are you?
I'm really good, man. How are you?
I'm so glad that you are here. We did the highs and everything, but I have to do this formally. Listen, so on this podcast, right? Like I love to the people that I invite, I love to celebrate people. And I forgot to mention that I love to celebrate everyday heroes, which you are an everyday hero, right? Sometimes sometimes we look at people on TV or people in sports or whatever, and we forget about the everyday heroes, man, the people that are on the ground, that are raising families or being active in the community the way that you are, so this show is about celebrating the kind of people like you. Why today is exceptional also is because I wanted to make sure that I have someone on this show that I love, that I respect very much, but that I may disagree with some things, right? And I'll explain. I have a friend, right? And he's the greatest guy in the world. He believes the earth is flat, right? And I'm not going to argue with him that the world is flat. He thinks the world is flat. I don't think the world is flat. But I love the guy, and I know where his heart is. You understand? And that's why if we were to ever go to battle, I'll always take his side. The same thing with you. You will always be family. You will always be friend. And I think that it's so important, especially now, that if we disagree on some things, we can respectfully talk about and get the stories out and everything. But I want to make sure that I celebrate you today, Mel, because we do think, and I'll make sure you got to send me some of your art so I can start plugging it in once I edit this stuff, because I think the world has to see some of your stuff.
Here, wait.
Mel, I'm going to stop ranting. Can you please, this is what we love to do. This is what I love to do. All right. I'll keep it real, man. This is what I love to do is, what is the story of Mel before your, career path, before you became a mom? Like, maybe you can give us in short or in long, whatever, where are you from? What was your childhood like? Like, we like to get these human stories before,
Yeah, I hear you.
before
No,
you
no,
became
no.
this super awesome artist activist.
So, it's funny that you talk about like what got me to this point, because one of the things I always say when I talk to people, and because you've seen me do like some public speaking, like everything is connected, and I truly believe that. There's so many shared experiences across people, and it doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter how you were raised, like none of that matters. There are shared experiences, and I like it's almost in my mind. It's like universal plan, and I know that like people are gonna be like, "Oh, woo, cuckoo for
Nah,
Cocoa Puffs," but I seriously believe that we are connected, like all energies are connected,
absolutely.
and everybody has those shared experiences at some level. But like I grew up in a pretty typical household. I was like my mom and dad. Um, we lived in New Jersey mostly. We moved to Mercer County when I was like 10, I think, 10-ish, or about to be 10.
Jersey girl.
Yeah. I wasn't born in Jersey. I was actually born in New York.
Oh, okay.
And like we lived in Ohio. I don't remember it really, except for like we had a tree growing in our house, like literally through the house. That's all I remember about that place. And then let's see, I think we moved from Ohio to New Jersey and then moved again to Mercer County when I was like 10 or so. And then my parents got divorced.
How old were you?
I want to say I was like 12-ish when it started, but I was definitely in high school, maybe 14 or 15 I think 15 when it actually was like official. Because it was only at that point my mother was gonna get like child support so we could live with her. So before she was receiving child support, she didn't make enough money to support us.
Wow.
And there was no court demanding that she get money from my dad. So she couldn't afford to have us in the house. So we lived with my dad. And my dad's an artist. He's still alive. He's 90. He did not have a great childhood. He never really talked about it. He probably still wouldn't. I was very close to his mother as a little girl. We spent a lot of time with them. And because they were close, they lived in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So it was easy to get there. And he was like, I don't know how to like talk about it. He really couldn't talk about his feelings. I mean, we had a lot of fun with my dad, but at a certain point, I think like he just couldn't relate to us anymore. Like teenage girls, he's an only child. So I think that it was really difficult for him. And then when he and my mom split up, he really did not have a good time. I mean, my mother was not having a good time by any means. You know, she had like 1 year of community college. So she like job selection was pretty narrow for her. My dad owned his own business. He's an artist. So he had his own firm in New York. So he was, you know, supporting himself, supporting us. But he went through like depression. He did some really fucked up shit.
Like a true artist, right?
Oh, good morning. I don't know who you are, but did you know he had kids? Kind of stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, there were some awkward moments there. And then, like I said, I think when the legality of it went through, my mother was like, come live with me. And I think my sister lasted there 2 months.
So there's two of you? Sorry, like siblings, two of you?
Yeah, I have a sister who's a couple years older than I am.
Okay.
And we, like, my mom really kind of still saw us in that vision of these are the little girls that I left behind, not we are two teenagers now. And so she was still very much wanting to have the same control that she had when we were tiny. And my sister was like, fuck no. You know, my mother would be like, where are you going? She'd be like, out. You know, like she was, they did not get along. It was ugly. It was very ugly. And she was only there for a couple months and she moved back in with my dad because my dad worked in New York and he was like gone 12, 14 hours a day. She could do whatever the fuck she wanted. Nobody held her accountable. So that was that. And it was probably better because she used to borrow my clothes and ruin them. And I was like, oh, you lost my, I had a leather jacket from playing a sport. She lost that. Like just dumb shit.
Were you two close, like as growing up as sisters?
Off and on, yes. We would like battle, not talk to each other. Battle.
What's the age difference?
2 years.
Oh, okay. So you guys are like right there, man.
Yeah, she's 2 years older than I am. And we don't talk anymore. This battle that we're in right now is like the longest lasting one we've had. It's been going on for like 15 years.
I got the same with my sister, so I feel you.
I don't know. I don't know if we'll bounce back or not. Like, I have tried to show compassion, show kindness. She has not. So I'm like, okay,
it's weird with family, man. Yeah. Did you ever like, what was the impact on you when you realized that your parents were splitting up? Like, well, because you were, you know, you weren't a little kid anymore.
No.
Like you were stepping into high school. Like, was it something that like, okay, it's good that it's happening because it's getting bad, or was it like a heartbreak?
A little bit. It was kind of surreal. Like at that time, not a lot of parents were getting divorced. And I had like friends in high school whose parents were like, "Oh my God, you poor baby!
Oh,
you know,
really?
like you should stay at our house. You can go to church with us on Sunday." And you know, like they were like trying to look out for me.
Wow.
Because they were very concerned, which I was like, okay, but really we're fine. And like it was surreal because they were both unhappy. And in some ways, it was like end the unhappiness. My sister and I were not directly affected by their unhappiness, but they would like at each other. And there were times that it was like screaming matches, and that was hard to be around as a kid. When, you know, the split came, it was an amicable, it never resolved itself as far as that's concerned. Like there was always a little bit of on both sides. And there was like bullshit years of, where are we going for Christmas? Where are we going for Thanksgiving? Like that kind of shit. That's just, you know, it's pointless in big picture. It's really pointless. Like whatever. So, you know, there was some awkwardness in the very beginning, but ultimately it was for the best. And it really taught me that when I decide to get married, if I decide to get married, that I want to make sure I want to know that I am making the right choice.
Right.
I want to be in a headspace where I'm thinking clearly and, you know, understanding the nature of that relationship, and how people can get wounded.
And understanding yourself, first of all, right?
And I like wanted to be an adult. And for years, I would tell my dad, I'm probably not going to get married. I'm probably not going to have kids. And he would say to me, like, my sister got married when she was 22, I think, the first time. And at her wedding, I'm dancing with my dad. And he's like, play the field, kid, play the field. Like 6 years later, 8 years later, I don't even know how old I was, hanging out with him. And he was like, maybe you should start thinking about settling down.
What is your parents' background as far as nationality?
My dad is Austrian, German. Okay. He actually had his DNA whatever done. We're a wee bit Russian, it turns out. And my mom is Italian, Irish, and Scottish.
You look Italian. You have an Italian look. I don't know why, man.
Well, you know, my mom is more Italian than Irish, Scottish. Because if you knew her, you'd be like, "Oh, I know exactly what." Like she is
Mamma mia. So did that ever play a part in your family, like the background, like as far as like were you guys taught like different customs, of
Other than the food, no.
mhm,
Um, because we didn't really live in proximity, I think, to our families. Um, we didn't have that like direct connection, but my mom made food like that was like traditional food from her growing upbringing, and
mhm,
my dad also had things like chicken pot pie, which I say that and people will be like, oh, with the crust and and no,
mhm.
that's not what it is. That's not how the Germans and the Austrians make chicken pot pie. It's like a stew. It's liquid. And so like there was those types of traditional foods that we ate because they were linked to the culture family, like from my mom's side and my dad's side. It's funny because like currently I don't eat like any of that stuff anymore. Like
Hmm.
my sister I know still prepares some of those meals as like because she grew up on them kind of thing. But at a certain point I just completely left them behind. I was a vegetarian for like 20 years and I had to like expand my food base.
But
I was too broke to buy meat.
basically you grew up with an idea, well, not an idea, but you always felt like we are American, right? Like we are an American
Yeah,
family. You never, right. That like that's what
yeah,
what was shocking that you said to me is that when you were a teenager and a kid, that the divorce culture wasn't as prevalent per se, right?
yeah.
Like
It was I'm trying to think, it was in the 80s.
because to us, like foreigners, we always thought that divorce was big in America, always, So
Oh, right. Yeah, it's really, I mean,
that's interesting.
yeah, it became really popular. Like, I think my parents were ahead of the curve.
Yeah. What do
But
you
I
think?
think that's when, like, the 80s is when it really started taking off.
Do you think
I know
because
you
it
love
was like a concern? I'm sorry for interrupting you.
no
Do you
worries.
think it was because like it was a conservative, I don't know, fashion or trend, like it was something acceptable of the society to
Yeah,
do?
I think at a certain point it started to become socially acceptable
Oh, that's what. Yeah.
because my mom specifically, like my mom's Catholic.
Mhm.
She passed away this past April,
I'm
but
sorry to hear that.
she was Catholic, and
Mhm.
the church was very important to her. Like
Yeah.
she made us go through the CCD and all that kind of stuff. Like she wanted us to be raised as good Catholic girls, like she was. And when they were separating and ultimately getting divorced, she went to the church for support, and the church basically fucking shunned her.
Wow.
And she was so crushed by that. Like I
Right.
have this memory of her like completely heartbroken because she really needed the support of the
Right.
church. She
Right.
needed to feel accepted.
Right.
And they were like, fuck you.
That's
So that
crazy.
was kind of a bummer. And that did turn me off to organized religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did try, like, I went to college after high school. Um, Mostly because my guidance counselor told me that if I didn't, I'd probably end up working at McDonald's the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that scared me enough. So I did go to college. I went to art school, obviously, um, Philadelphia College of Art. And I tell people all the time that, like, I lived in New Jersey, but I grew up in Philly
Hmm.
because that 4 year period, I did a summer school program, I think between my junior and senior year of high school at Philadelphia College of Art, UArts. They had like a 6 week summer program. You went and you stayed on campus and you took art classes all day. It was phenomenal. It
Hmm.
literally changed my idea of what I wanted for myself. Making art every day, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, there is nothing else anymore. It's just making art every day. And so when I got home, I was like, I know what I want to do. And I applied to art schools and I got accepted. And then PCA offered me cash because my dad was like, you should go to more art. It's an all
Right.
girls school. Don't be around the boys. And I was like, oh no, 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 no. I visited more art. And at the time they told us And I was like, well, what do the girls do for fun on the weekends? Like, at an all-girls school. Oh, we put you all on a bus and we ship you off to Drexel. And I was like, so you herd us like cattle to the boys? Is that what I just heard you say, lady? I'm like, no, bye.
It's terrible, man.
No, I mean,
So what were you like if you were to walk in right now, either like you graduating high school or going into art school, like if you were to describe to me right now the Mel that you would see, like how would you describe that Mel?
well, I was really naive because I had not really been exposed to anyone outside of that community I went to high school with. You know, growing up in English Town, like my first, whatever, 10 years in Manalapan Township in New Jersey was very, very different than the place we moved to. And I was always like, felt like an outsider once we moved because I hadn't been born there. I hadn't grown up there. My parents hadn't lived there. We lived in this crazy house and everybody was like, oh my God, you live in that house? You must be fucking rich. And I was like, no, we're just people.
Why was it haunted or something? Why was it crazy?
It was a geodesic dome. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. My parents built the house, had the house built.
Wow.
And because of that, people were like, oh my God, you guys must be loaded. And
so you guys are really ahead of time, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it was really great. We were in the woods. So for me, it was awesome because I like traipsed around the woods all day.
Were you off grid? Like, well, how did that work?
No, it was just a weird house. My dad saw it somewhere and fell for it. So he was like, I want this. My mom was like, okay. And that's what we built. So, I mean, it was great. It was really fun. It was like, location was ideal. There were nice kids around the corners. We had people to play with. But when I went to college, I started meeting people from people across the country, from really conservative places, from really liberal places. My college freshman roommate was a girl from Washington, D.C. And I mean, she came in guns blazing, like activist this, activist that. She was like, and I had already had a little bit of taste of like white man bullshit.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say that.
Nah, man. No nice things over here. We want to hear exactly what you're thinking, man.
Disrespecting me because I was a girl.
Okay.
In high school, several. I can give you like a handful of incidents where they were like, I know, honey, but if you would just, because, you know, the football team player wasn't this, fuck you, was my response. And also, you know, boys who are like acting inappropriately towards me. That's the nicest way I can say that. Just that kind of shit. And I was like,
sorry to hear that, man.
And I was like, no, I'm not tolerating that. And then to meet people, like my roommate freshman year, this young woman who was just like, you know, here's my level. She was like up here already with it. And I was like, wow, I was empowered by her a little bit.
Okay.
She was very odd. She wasn't super friendly. I ran into her years later and we like hit it off and like had a friendship, had coffee a couple times.
So basically you were already growing into this individual with certain ideas and ideals, right?
Yeah. And I mean, some of it was totally, you know, naive. But that time, that 4 years in college and being exposed to so many other people's ideas and like direct contact through art, right? Through like conversations with people, hanging out with people, being in the city, right? The city culturally is very active, tons of museums, live music, theater production, like just being exposed.
Where were you in Philly? Was it like downtown? Like
right in Center City, yeah.
Okay. Philly was different back then, right?
Yeah. I mean, people just have a tendency in general to be afraid of cities. And I just think it's like fear of the unknown.
But it wasn't as ghetto as it is now, basically, right? Philly, because Philly got pretty ghetto.
I don't don't think it's that bad now. Where I lived at the time, like my senior year of college, I lived on 13th or Broad and Christian.
Okay.
That neighborhood was shit back then. Like the kids
Mm.
in the neighborhood would see me and they'd be go, there go that white lady. Like
Oh,
literally, that's
really?
what they would say when I walk by. There go that white lady.
Mm.
And our house got broken into twice. Second time I was home. I mean, almost every place I lived when I lived in Philly in the 80s got broken into.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought it
I
was
think
much
now that I'm
better.
thinking about it, I think every place I lived got broken into.
I thought it was much better because, like, it's so funny because I remember a few years ago, because New York, like it cleaned up for a
Yeah.
while, like it wasn't as bad as it was
Yeah. The
in the
70s.
90s, right? So I remember I bring one of my homeboys, and he's from the Bronx. He's like a 6'5" black guy, and we're driving through Philly, and we stop, and I go to a bodega, I go to the corner store, and he's like, "Yo, Nas, lock the windows, man." And I'm like, what? So just to give you an idea, right? That even in New York, we got like to us, because we cleaned
Yeah.
up for a while, man. And here we were in Philly. So I was wondering if Philly was much cleaner back then, or if it was always like this.
Well, because I lived all over the city, well, all over Center City. Like I saw like the nice area of Center City. I saw the shitty area of Center City. When I left college, I stayed in Philly like, I don't know, almost maybe a year. And my dad called me and he was like, look, I got this gig and I know you're kind of, farting around in the city. I'm like, I'm paying my bills. I'm like, dude, I work 7 to 10 days a month.
Oh, so you were working,
bills.
right?
I'm buying my food. I'm having a good time. I see no reason to change anything.
Where were you working? What were you doing at the time?
I had this really crazy job in Horsham, Pennsylvania. And oh my God, it wasn't the TV Guide, but it was like another publication that was basically the TV Guide. And a guy who lived in South Philly who worked there used to drive through Center City and pick me up because I didn't have a car and take me to work when I worked. They would bring in like, I don't know, 20 of us for 7 to 10 days a month. And we might work straight through, or we might just work like the Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, depending on what the deadline was. And we put together this book, like old school, on a light table with cutting and cleaning up. And they fucking loved me. Because I am a nitpicky bitch, okay? And they were like, you're good at being nitpicky. And I was like, fuck yes. I was like, I don't like shit mistakes, okay? Like, I'm still that way. When I read a book, I see every extra space and it fucking annoys me. So they loved me there. And I worked there, I don't know, 6-9 months. It was the total blow-off job. Like, it did not involve any major effort on my part intellectually. But it freed me up to be at home and work and make art and go out and get exposure and all that other shit. So I thought it was a great job. And then my dad was like, look, I can give you a real design gig. Why don't you take it? And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. So I did that. I moved back home. I lived in my mom's basement and I worked in New York City.
Okay.
For a couple of years.
Before we get to New York City, this is what I'm wondering, and I think this is really important, and I don't want to skip over this. Why did you choose art? Like, what was in the express? Was it because of your dad, or like because you were exposed to it, or like were you always painting? Throughout your child, like why did you decide to follow that path?
So I've always really enjoyed art making. And I do believe, like, looking back a little bit, it was because it was something I did with my dad. Like, when I was like, I want to make something, he was always like, yes. He was always right there, like, willing to just jump in with me. And he did try to, like, educate me, like, to teach me about art principles and shit that I am now, as an art teacher, explaining to students.
Wow.
So it's kind of funny whenever I hear myself talking about, like, shadows generally have a blue cast. So whenever I hear myself say that out loud, I see my dad trying to explain that to me as a child when we were painting a vase. And
but it was
enjoyed
something.
it.
It was something that you loved, right?
Yeah, it
And
was fun to do. Like you got to be tactily involved. And then my dad was like, if you like it, we can give you art classes. And I was like, sure. And when we moved to Mercer County, there was a small studio, art studio, like teaching studio,
Mhm.
maybe 3 miles from our house. I could ride my bike there. So he was like, hey, I got you classes. And he took me, I think, the first round just so I would know where it was. And I walked in and I was the only kid. Everyone else in the class was an adult. And it kind of freaked me out at first, but the teacher was very welcoming. He was a guy, I have no idea how old he was because I couldn't tell you at that point how old people were. And
They were all old, right?
Yeah, they were all adults, like some had gray hair. And they were all like, when I walked in, they were all like, oh my God. Like they were kind of freaked out by this like 12-year-old kid
Wow.
in an art class. And the guy never disrespected me because I was because I was a child. He gave me the same level of respect that he gave to all the other people in the room he was instructing. Like he was a very nice dude. And at a certain point, like I don't remember the weird stuff. We did all kinds of stuff in that class. He was like, you really have a unique perspective on stuff. And at the time I was like, I do? Okay, right? I'm 12. But he started talking to me about a couple of artists, Paul Klee. And I gotta look at his picture up here. I have him on the wall. Where's the camera?
I see it. I see it.
Vasily
Wow.
Kandinsky. Okay, he's a German painter.
What
Sorry,
with
a
a
Russian painter.
with a Polish last name? Yeah.
Yes, he the art school that he went to was in Ukraine.
What I'm leading to is like, and I'm really curious about this. What were you expressing in your art, and what did your art grow into as you were already in college, and it became like a path now?
Prove to me that you are alive.
Yeah. So as a kid, it was just like exploration, fun stuff. And then when I did that summer program and I was like engaged with the art making process, that's when, like I said, the inner voice became incredibly clear that I wanted to make art. Like that is what I wanted to do for a living.
But if you would look back now, like, was it light? Was it dark? Was it like, expressing your inner feelings, or was it like, talking about what you see in the world? Was it everything put together? Like, if you were to look back, like, what were you expressing in your art?
So I think at that point, like I didn't really start expressing things until I was like almost out of school, because I was so absorbed in like the learning of technique, controlling the medium, like just that kind of being engaged by the process.
And you were basically looking for your style, probably, like
Yeah, and
every
I was just
artist,
like,
right?
what can I do? Like, what are the possibilities? And a couple teachers challenged me with some assignments where they were like, these are the things these are the technical aspects I want to see in your project. Go. And they're like, it was like, well, what do I make my project about? And they were like, I don't know what. Like they were purposely not guiding, because they were like, well, you have these techniques you can do. Bye, go do something with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it forced you to think. And if you needed inspiration, then you needed to go find inspiration. And so it was a lot of trial and error back then. And then when I got out of college and I actually started like working as a graphic designer, that became my outlet of expression. Like, but it was other people's messages. That's when I talk to kids about graphic design, because I do teach graphic design. I say to them, right now in this space, you are expressing your own ideas, and you are ultimately the last word on that. But when you are a graphic designer, you are expressing someone else's ideas, and they are the last word. And partially I say that because I'm like, the last thing you want to do is make something you don't like, because then they're going to pick it and you're going to be stuck with it. But like, so I spent an enormous part of my artistic life involved in expressing other people's ideas.
That's a big adjustment, man, you know, because I make music, and I can't imagine, like, and I talked about, like, I used to talk about this with like record labels. Like, I couldn't imagine, like, let's say a record label coming to me and giving me a order of like, make a song like this. Like, I don't know if I would be able to do that. I think you know, it's for an artist, it's a very tough thing to do, because, you know.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, when, I don't know if it was Billie Eilish. Yeah, I think she did the Barbie song. What am I made for? Like, to be able to put yourself in that position, those shoes of what is the overall message here? What is the bigger picture? And how do I express that? It can be challenging. And like, I've always been better at the concept. And at a certain point, like, you know, job jumping, whatever, through the hierarchy of the design industry, I got to the point where I could hire and cultivate young people under me. And this is kind of a joke, because up until I became a teacher, I was the youngest boss in the room.
Wow.
And so at a certain point, I was able to like hire people under me, have that control, and then be able to work with them, like to have these big ideas and work with them to feed the big idea and to produce something for our client, our publication, or whatever, you know, whatever the end product was. And if I didn't have the technical skill, right, I had the initial vision, I handed the vision to them, they took it and moved it, and then we would like discuss it like you would, you know, critique a piece of art or whatever. You'd have that exchange of ideas and information, and then it would just sort of go from there.
Yeah.
And that was incredibly fulfilling from an art standpoint, to have those exchanges continued and to be able to contribute big picture. And at a certain point, I started realizing that I was spending an enormous amount of my time. This is going to sound so like me, the picky bitch. Here I am, explaining to people why ideas made sense. Like, I started realizing I am spending my time educating my people how to think conceptually. Adults. Adults. I was like, I am wasting my time, because they were like, it says swing. If I don't see swing, then it can't be real. And I'm like,
it's like speaking another language, basically, and somebody doesn't know that language, man.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm done here. I want to switch gears. So I did work for myself. I had a partner who was a writer, and he and I did some really good work that we really enjoyed. We couldn't make ends meet doing it, unfortunately. And I had a child at that point.
That's another accolade that I forgot to mention. Our dear Mel is also a published writer, man.
Oh God, yeah. We'll get to that book. Don't worry.
Yeah,
that was an awesome experience.
So what I want to know is, like, when you're going through like these life journeys, your dad got you the gig, and you know, you're living out of your mom's basement, and you're doing the graphic design, and then you have like these big, you know, teams under you. You're the youngest boss in the room, like, and I could kind of see how, you know, how you're operating all of this, because you basically had this long baggage of, you know, experience in art. Like, you've been doing it your whole life, right? But during that time, are you doing something for yourself still? Like, are you expressing yourself, like side pieces?
No, at that point, I had not really been doing a lot for myself. The break point for me when I started making art. So I left New York because New Yorkers were so fucking rude.
Where were you in New York? Where were you?
I was almost in the Diamond District, like 47th.
Oh my God,
vicinity. And
I spent 15 years in the Diamond District. That's my neighborhood, man.
I loved riding the train. I didn't have to get up the fucking crack of dawn, but I got to nap on the train, so it was all good. And I got to read books. It was awesome. But I distinctly remember walking down the street behind these two guys who were probably just a few years older than I was. And one guy is talking about the chick that gave him head last night. And I was like, I don't fucking need to hear that, dude. Like, I just don't. I don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear you publicly disrespect a woman. You know, and he was like being very graphic. He had hand motions, and I was like, no, motherfucker, no, I don't want to hear it. And like, you know, you walk through a door and people just slam the door. They don't hold the door. And I was like, no, I'm done. So I left that job and I was like, sorry, Dad. But New York is too mean, and I'm just not into being around that many mean people. So I did leave that job. I ended up having to move to find another decent job. And then
so you moved out of New York?
I moved out of New Jersey. I moved to Pennsylvania.
PA.
I was dating a guy at the time who had a cousin who was an artist and said, oh, there's lots of design art jobs where we are. So we moved we like went and rented a place in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania. And it was good. I had a good job. I worked my way up to be like the boss in that department. That's where I met my husband.
Congratulations.
A little bit about that story. I will not rehash it.
He's an awesome guy.
He is an awesome guy. And we had a falling out. And I happened to have I worked for public broadcasting, and they used to do this art auction every year. And everybody was like, oh, like, you're an artist, you should make something. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't actually made anything in a million years. But I was like, you're right, I should. And then you guys can like talk it up that your staff. And so I did like a very tiny drawing that I was sort of somewhat embarrassed by.
Why?
It was just not very good. That sounds bad, but it because I really didn't put a lot of mental energy into it. It was just like sort of pretty, which I was just like, whatever, it's a piece. If you guys get money for it, I'll be thrilled. That's the whole reason I'm giving it to you, so you can sell it off to somebody and get a few bucks to support the television station. So a woman who was bidding on it really, really loved it. And I don't think she won the bid, but she called the station and she was like, who was that artist? I want to talk to them.
Holy shit.
And hold on one second. I'm on a podcast, yes.
Sweet.
How can I help you, sir? My son's here.
Say hi. That's another awesome guy.
Yeah, he is an awesome guy.
I'm an awesome guy.
Yeah, you're an awesome guy.
It's true.
We survived you.
So they called the radio station.
Yes,
they're like, who is that, right?
Yeah, she called, and then the next day at work, they're like, hey, you know, your piece sold. We're super happy. And the woman who didn't get it wanted your number. And I was like, okay. And they were like, so here's her number. Give her a call. So I called her. She owned a gallery, excuse me, in Lancaster, PA. And she was like, I want you to do a show. And I was like, what?
Wow.
She was like, no, I want you to do a show. And I was like, I don't have anything. And she was like, you tell me how long it would take you to get work together. I'm like, how many pieces do I need? She's like, come see the space.
Wow.
She's like, you can have as much of it as you want. It turned out her space was amazing.
Was this a paid gig? Like what?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
She was like, you get 55, I take 45% until my bills are met for the month. And then Anything past that, it's yours. She's like, I
So
won't take any.
so for the first time, it gives you like this space where you can take time off and basically just focus on that expression, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't walk away from my job.
Okay.
I just worked at night, which was okay with me.
So I'm sorry, but
No.
um how did you walk into something like this? And this is what I'm interested in, right? Like you get this idea, you get this order base, like you're basically like, look, let's do this show. You can, and she basically said you can express yourself the way you express yourself, right?
Yeah.
What was going on in your head? Like, what did you have a concept? Like, what were you gonna do?
No, I was like, holy fuck, what did I just bite into here? Because I'd never done anything like that before, ever.
Right.
And I was like, she saw this one little tiny drawing that I did and was like, whatever you want to show, just
Right.
give me whatever you got. Like, I don't care. And
Wow.
it was like around that time that I was suffering great heartbreak. And I did really need something to focus on. So I was like, okay, well, there was a point in college, at the very end of my college life, undergrad, that I was like struggling with deep emotions about a number of things. And a really good friend of mine got me and another artist together, and we broke out big paper and we had like mass scribbling sessions. They were very therapeutic.
Mhm.
Very therapeutic. Art therapy was my minor in college. I didn't finish the program, but I got really curious about it, so I started it late, and then I just didn't finish it because I was like, I'm 21. I am so fucking done with school right now. But those scribbling sessions were mind-blowingly freeing. No expectation.
Right.
No judgment about what you're making. It was very therapeutic. So I started at that point. I was like, I'm just gonna take material and I'm just gonna abuse paper.
Wow.
And that's what I did. I made these like large rage scribbles.
Wow.
And then I started looking at them and I was like, oh, there's something in here.
What's the category of those the paintings? Like
Of the pieces?
it's not, well, the way your style, it's not impressionism. What would you call
No.
it?
I refer to it as organic abstracts.
Okay.
Because most of them really are based on something that exists.
Okay.
And then like I sort of let my hand and mind wander from that initial
it
concept.
exists as a feeling, right?
Yeah, it's like okay, I love trees. I'm literally a fucking tree hugger.
Yeah.
But I am also love trees because of the environment and all that.
Right.
But visually, trees have always been incredibly appealing to me. Like I'm very curious about trees.
Wow.
Just in a general sense. And so like a lot of times I'll start drawing something like a tree. Oh, look, there's a tree right there.
Mm-hmm.
I just noticed that.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
That's Georgia O'Keeffe. And she was one of the artists when I was in college that I was like, oh my God, her work is so beautiful. But she's painting. She's not drawing. She's using oil. But so like I would draw a tree and then my mind would sort of let go of the fact that I am trying to draw a tree, and my subconscious and my hand would just sort of start taking areas and moving them, and where are they going to go? Like, how are they going to continue to move around and become part of the bigger picture? And that is really what leads me when I am working. So like if in some of my pieces, and I know you've only seen maybe a handful, but that is really evident. Like that process, I feel, is really evident. And like color is super important to me in work. and it really helps communicate how like it can engage you emotionally. My college thesis for the graphic design program was the affect value of color, the emotional value of color.
Wow.
And so the research I did for that project gave me this like nice foundation. So when I deal with color, when I paint, or when I'm working, I'm a pastel artist, when I'm working with the pastel, I'm very conscious about how the colors interact and how I can manipulate them to work together in a way that can be emotionally engaging. And not like, oh, I want you to feel my art.
Right.
I mean,
No,
I
no,
think
no, I
you and I
understand.
did talk about how some of my pieces, you know, off camera,
Yeah.
how many of them have been founded in intense emotional struggle.
Right.
But when I am just working, and the piece that was in last year's show, the woman Madonna
Yeah.
Fish,
Incredible.
that's a great example of how I wanted really color to be working to engage the whole concept, like work as part of the concept of the picture, of the value of a relationship from mother to child.
Right.
How color can support that as well. Like that was important.
So when you're in the process, does the artist and the practical art teacher argue with one another? Like, oh, the shadows here, the color, like, does
Yes.
that
Oh,
happen?
absolutely. I think making
Because you
those
said you're a nitpicker, right?
oh God, yeah, I'm so fucking picky. I like if you could see me in class, I say that to my students. It's because I'm picky. I have a standard, and you will meet the standard. Like I'm like, no, I will not settle for that, and neither will you. But yes, when I'm working, if something starts to go wrong, and I have a piece that I started, a friend of mine had a show, and she was like, "You want to make something?" And I was like, "I'd love to." So I started this piece, and I'll show it to you if you want. And the color started to go wrong. And I was like, I don't think I can bring this back. I don't think I can save this. And so I was like, I have to stop working on it. So I set it down, and I haven't really touched it since. And I was looking at it a little while ago.
To all the artists out there, take that example. Do not force yourself. Whenever you're gonna force yourself, it's always gonna be poo-poo, man.
Yeah. Well, and there's a point in the process that you don't like. You may not know where to go from there, and you don't have to finish it in the moment. You just don't. And being able to step back and say, "This is as far as I can take it right now."
Exactly.
Is fine. Is totally fine. And I'm thankful I did that, because I was talking about that piece with some friends. All right, I'm going to go get it.
Please.
Okay, because it's the topic is relevant.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do my best to get it on the board here. It's huge.
Oh wow, man! You do these big pieces, man.
So
oh my God!
You can see, right? This is too dark.
Listen, that's beautiful, though. Oh my God!
So that's the piece, and we were talking about it. Oh.
Mel, that's so beautiful, man. So what's the concept? What is it?
All right. So the show concept was things you can't say in public.
Wow.
And I was like, that's fucking perfect, because, there's so much I can't say out loud in public.
Oh, you better say it here, man. That's what we're all about. Let's go.
Like like I said, I'm a teacher. I have to self-edit every day. I can't, whatever I am thinking or feeling about what is going on in the world cannot interfere with my goal in the classroom.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah.
Because in my eyes, my job is to teach kids to think for themselves.
Right.
And I don't want to be like, hey, well, this is what I think. No, they need to figure it out. So I just want to give them the skills to figure it out. And, So this particular piece is it's vaginas.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was kind of looking at, that's what I was thinking originally. Like, is it a peach? Is it like, it looked,
Yes.
can I see it
there
again,
are
man?
so
That's
many
so
things. I'm
interesting.
gonna pull it up again.
Let me-
I know it's funny. I
No,
have to
but
laugh at it, honestly.
I don't see, I don't get like sometimes why we, maybe because I'm Slavic, man. Like, I don't, I'm going to ask you a weird question.
Yeah, no.
Is that expression of real vaginas that you've seen,
Yes.
or is it really?
Yes. Okay. So
Oh,
this is
wow.
the funny part, and this is why it's kind of funny.
Okay.
Because I was talking to a friend of mine. She does a lot of art. We went and had dinner with them a couple weeks ago. She's done a lot of like crazy weird art projects, giant dicks, boobs. She created a telephone booth. It was just full of foam boobs. It was fucking great. But she like experiments with off center ideas, and her work is really interesting. And when this show came up and I had this opportunity, I always have had the deep impression that women are not valued.
Me too, man.
And
I'm the dude right here. I advocate for that, man.
yeah, and I like, people are like, oh, feminism. It's like, no, humanism. Sorry. It doesn't matter whether I have a fucking dick or a vagina. It doesn't fucking matter. I'm a person. You're a person. It should not matter. And people like want to disrespect people because of stupid shit like that.
Right.
You're gay.
Yeah.
You're black. You're this. You're that. No, you're human.
Right.
Like, just stop already. So, so that is something, when she was like, things you can't say out loud. I'm like, here it is. Here it is. Like, people just look at you and all they see is a fucking vajayjay. And I was like, I'm going to just show them a vajayjay right back. So I went online and I researched what they look like. Because I only have one.
Yeah, because there's different like shapes and like,
I had no
it's
fucking
crazy.
clue how radically different they are.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And so that's why this piece came up, because my girlfriend asked me, she's like, well, what were you doing? And her husband was like, and I was like, well, it's my vajayjay drawings. And she was like, did you finish? And I was like, no. And he was like, you were what? And I was like, yes, I was drawing vaginas. So I took out my phone to show him. And he was like, those are all vaginas. And I was like, yes, actually. And he was like, well, of course, I know what they look like. And then I showed it to him. He was like, wow, they're all based on real. And I was like, yes. Like, I was looking at photos. But like getting to that process of knowing when you need to stop to readjust. So after I went back and started looking at this again, and I was like, there may be something I can do for it, that I can finish it.
I wanted to say something, and I want to see what you think about that. And I think that that the Eurocentric Judeo-Christian world that kind of infiltrated the whole entire world almost have taught us to be funny and be ashamed of the most silliest but yet natural things in the world, right? I think us as humanity, we should be ashamed of like being assholes to one another, or judgment or things. So something like a vagina, it's a completely natural, it's a beautiful thing. Babies come out of it, or they don't come out of it. But it's completely natural. It's the way that we've been taught, and we should check ourselves how we view, right? Like view the vagina. Like my wife and I, we always have these conversations, and it's like, oh, this girl is walking down the street with a super short skirt, right? And I'm saying it's not the girl's problem that she's wearing a short skirt. It's the way we have taught the boys to be the way he's looking at that girl, as he's looking at her. Like we should be
have
teaching our
created that
young men.
culture.
We should be teaching the young men that that's not a piece of meat walking with a short skirt.
Yeah.
And he should realize that that's a human being, like Mel said, right? And so I think that the way like our ideas and the way we look at one another is completely twisted. Like we are so fine with like blasting one another online and saying mean things, but then it's like a vagina. Oh my God, she drew like, and I think it's completely flipped around. I don't know what you think about that.
Like that, you're absolutely dead on. Like this drawing, it can't be seen everywhere. If people will realize that it's a bunch of vaginas, they're gonna lose their shit.
Which is crazy, which is so stupid.
And, like we, as a culture in this country, I'm assuming it might be worldwide because I've been to Italy and I had little old men try and fucking grab my ass on a bus. But we as a culture, right? And I'm gonna maybe upset people. I don't really fucking care. It's white guy culture. It's old white guy shit. The old boys network. You know, we want to keep everybody in their place. We want to be the big machismo. We want to be the guy in charge. We want to make, you know, we want to be the hero in every story or whatever. You know, we can all be together. We can have balance. We can have relationships where a woman wants to be cared for like that without it being seen as, you know, he's in control. Or, you know, that it's this dominant masculine thing. It can be her choice to enjoy that, but there can also be relationships where there is balance between the two, or she is the breadwinner. She is
absolutely. It's whatever you guys agree to.
Do something else.
You know what's the craziest argument, and I made so many videos about this because I was raised by a powerful, beautiful, strong mother, right? And this argument, man, that men are tougher than women, or the fact that women are more emotional and men are more logical. I'm like, where are you guys getting this from?
Making it up.
Whenever, like, we can just look at society overall, right? Whenever a problem arises in the family, who's the first one out the door, right? And who's the one that will suck it up and do the right freaking thing, man? 2 kids, 3 kids, the woman will always suck it up and do the right. So who's more freaking emotional? Whenever there's a bar fight, who's the one that's jumping into the bar fight, and who's the one that's holding you back? Like, honey, maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe you're good. Who's more emotional, bro?
Right.
Like, I don't get where, like, and again, it's going back to this Eurocentric Judeo-Christian. And I just want to add a little correction, right? Because you say white guy culture, and you're right. In America, it's big. I want to add a correction, and I've been advocating for this for a long time, because people don't realize that what we usually call like the white guy, straight white guy culture is actually Anglo-Saxon, Western European, right? Because we always forget about the Slavs, right? that are like completely like in their whole, like they're these Asian white people that the Anglo-Saxons don't accept them, you know? So they're still, but anyway.
Like there are white people who have issues with Jewish people who, you know, are also white. Right. But they're like, no, they're not white, they're Jewish.
You know what? My wife and I was talking about this today, right? And my boy, shout out to Alpha, great person. And I was like telling him about Slavic culture and everything. And he goes, Naz, it's not about Slavic culture, it's about humanity. And I'm like, my brother, you are right. But this is why it is humanity, because guess what? We live in this super, different world where there are different cultures, there are different beliefs, there are different, and we can celebrate one another's culture.
Yes.
We can celebrate that we are different. I'm like, would you want for tomorrow for the whole world to be purple and we all spoke English? No, we would lose
Yes.
the beauty of the world, right?
Yeah. So just as an aside, like not to point out the obvious, here in the United States, the most successful states, like that have the most successful economies, they are also the most diverse states in this country.